The first signs of the impending doom came subtly, almost imperceptibly, like a shadow creeping across the horizon. The peaceful inhabitants of Zyara, a race known for their advanced technology and harmonious society, had always believed in their ability to maintain peace. For centuries, their civilization flourished in the serene embrace of their twin suns, their cities gleaming like beacons of progress amidst the lush landscapes of their home planet. They had no reason to fear the unknown, least of all an attack from a species they barely understood. The war began with a distant rumble, a disturbance in the outer colonies that quickly escalated into full-scale conflict. The humans, driven by motives the Zyarans could only speculate upon, launched a series of aggressive strikes that decimated Zyara's outer defenses. The initial shock of the attacks was overwhelming, and for the first time in generations, the Zyarans faced a threat that their advanced technology struggled to repel. In the grand halls of Zyara's capital, Eldoria, the Council of Elders convened emergency sessions, their voices filled with a mix of incredulity and determination. "We are the custodians of peace," the High Elder proclaimed, his voice echoing through the chamber. "We have weathered storms and resisted invasions. We will not falter now." Despite their resolve, the Zyarans were unprepared for the relentless onslaught. The humans, with their brute force and strategic cunning, seemed to anticipate every defensive move. Each battle left more Zyran cities in ruins, their shimmering spires crumbling under the relentless bombardment. The skies, once clear and filled with the soft glow of their twin suns, were now darkened by the smoke of war and the menacing silhouettes of human warships. On the ground, Zyran soldiers fought valiantly. Their sleek, technologically advanced armor and weaponry were a testament to their civilization's achievements. But against the sheer numbers and ferocity of the human invaders, they found themselves increasingly outmatched. Stories of bravery and sacrifice emerged from the front lines, tales of soldiers standing their ground against impossible odds, their determination shining like a beacon of hope amidst the darkness. In the midst of this chaos, life on Zyara continued with a semblance of normalcy. Markets bustled with activity, schools remained open, and families clung to their routines as if by doing so, they could ward off the encroaching doom. The government issued reassurances, their broadcasts filled with messages of strength and resilience. "We will endure," they declared. "We will prevail." But beneath the surface, fear and uncertainty began to take root. Whispers of doubt spread through the streets of Eldoria and beyond. How could a civilization as advanced as Zyara be brought to its knees by a species that, by all accounts, was less technologically developed? What were the humans truly after, and why were they so relentless in their pursuit? As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, the war showed no signs of abating. The human forces seemed inexhaustible, their attacks unrelenting. The Zyarans, for all their advancements and peaceful nature, found themselves pushed to the brink of collapse. And yet, they held on to a fragile thread of hope, a belief that somehow, they would find a way to overcome this seemingly insurmountable challenge. In the darkest hours of the conflict, when all seemed lost, a decision was made. A decision that would change the course of Zyara's history forever. The High Elder, his face etched with the weight of countless lives, gathered the council for one final, desperate meeting. The room was silent, the air heavy with anticipation and dread. "We must consider the unthinkable," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "We must prepare for the possibility of surrender." The words hung in the air, a chilling reminder of their desperate situation. As the council debated and deliberated, the reality of their predicament became painfully clear. The war with the humans was not just a battle for territory or resources, it was a struggle for survival itself. And in that struggle, the Zyarans would soon face a choice that would define their future, for better or worse. Despite the distant echoes of war and the unsettling news from the front lines, life on Zyara persisted with a facade of normalcy. In Eldoria, the capital city, the glittering towers still gleamed under the twin suns, and the daily rhythms of life continued as if to defy the encroaching chaos. The streets buzzed with activity as merchants sold exotic goods, children played in the vibrant parks, and scholars debated in the halls of learning. The The Zairans held onto their routines, finding comfort in the familiar. Schools stayed open, with classrooms filled with eager students learning advanced science, philosophy, and the arts. Outside, the occasional rumble of conflict disturbed the peaceful hum of daily life. Families gathered for evening meals, sharing stories and laughter while casting worried glances at news broadcasts flickering on their screens. The government, determined to maintain morale, flooded the airwaves with messages of hope and resilience. High Elder Arion, the stoic leader of the Council of Elders, addressed the nation regularly, his voice a steady beacon in the storm. "We are strong," he would say, his image projected into every home. "We have faced adversity before, and we have always emerged victorious. Trust in our strength and trust in each other." Yet, beneath the surface of these assurances, a growing unease spread among the population. The war had lasted longer than anyone had anticipated, and the human forces showed no signs of retreat. Rumors began to circulate, whispers of the true scale of the devastation reaching the inner cities. The loss of outer colonies, the destruction of once thriving communities, and the relentless advance of human troops painted a grim picture that no amount of governmental reassurances could entirely dispel. In the markets, once bustling with trade, merchants noticed a steady decline in goods arriving from the orbital docks. Ships that once brought exotic foods, rare minerals, and advanced technologies now returned empty, their crews bearing tales of blockade and destruction. Trade has slowed to a trickle, one merchant confided to another, their voices hushed. 9 out of 10 berths in the orbital docks are empty. How long before we feel the full impact here? For many Zairans, the first real signs of the war's toll came not from broadcasts or rumors, but from the empty shelves and the rising prices of everyday necessities. The economy, once a robust pillar of Zairan society, began to falter under the strain of prolonged conflict. In homes across the planet, families tightened their belts, rationing food and resources and hoping for a swift end to the turmoil. Amidst this backdrop of growing tension, the government continued to project an image of control and stability. Security forces patrolled the streets, their presence a constant reminder of the ongoing conflict. The Council of Elders held frequent meetings, their deliberations growing increasingly urgent and fraught with the weight of their decisions. Within the grand chambers of the Eldoria Citadel, strategies were debated and defenses were reinforced, all while the distant sounds of battle edged ever closer. For the younger generation, the war was a confusing and terrifying backdrop to their formative years. Children who had grown up in peace now played games of war in the streets, mimicking the battles they overheard their parents discussing in hushed tones. Teenagers, once focused on their studies and future careers, found themselves drafted into the militia, their bright futures put on hold as they were thrust into the brutal reality of combat. In the midst of all this, small acts of defiance and hope persisted. In the art districts of Eldoria, murals sprang up overnight, depicting scenes of peace and unity, a silent protest against the destruction that raged beyond the city's borders. Musicians played in public squares, their melodies a poignant reminder of the beauty and creativity that defined Zairan culture. In the quiet corners of the city, people gathered in secret to share stories of hope and resilience, to remind each other of their shared humanity and their determination to endure. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, the fabric of Zairan society began to fray under the relentless pressure of war. The High Elder and his council faced the daunting task of maintaining order and hope in a world increasingly overshadowed by despair. And yet, amidst the growing uncertainty, the Zairans clung to a fragile thread of hope, believing that somehow, some way, they would find a path through the darkness and emerge stronger on the other side. Unbeknownst to the citizens of Zaira, a decision was brewing within the walls of the Eldoria Citadel, a decision that would soon shake the very foundations of their world. The High Elder, burdened by the weight of countless lives, prepared to address his people with news that would forever change the course of their history. The path to surrender, once unthinkable, now loomed as a stark and unavoidable reality, a desperate bid for survival in the face of insurmountable odds. The day began like any other, with the twin suns casting their warm glow over the city of Eldoria. Streets filled with the usual bustle of morning activity as citizens went about their daily routines. Yet, an undercurrent of tension rippled through the air, an unspoken anxiety that had grown stronger with each passing day of the war. Little did the Zairans know that this day would mark a turning point in their history. In the heart of the city, the grand Eldoria citadel stood tall, its spires reaching toward the heavens. Inside its fortified walls, the Council of Elders gathered in a solemn assembly. The High Elder, Arion, stood at the center, his expression grave as he prepared to deliver the most consequential speech of his life. The decision had been made, and there was no turning back. At precisely noon, the city's communication channels lit up, broadcasting the High Elder's address to every corner of Zaira. Screens flickered to life in homes, schools, and public squares. The familiar face of High Elder Arion appeared, his demeanor a mixture of determination and sorrow. A hush fell over the city as Zairans paused to listen. Citizens of Zaira, Arion began, his voice resonating with a depth that commanded attention. We have faced many trials and tribulations throughout our history. We have always emerged stronger, united by our resilience and our commitment to peace. Today, I stand before you to deliver news that no leader wishes to convey. He paused, taking a deep breath, as if gathering the strength to continue. Our war with the humans has reached a critical juncture. Despite our best efforts, despite the bravery and sacrifice of our soldiers, we find ourselves facing an insurmountable force. The human fleets are vast, their numbers overwhelming. We have done all we can, but the time has come to acknowledge the reality before us. A wave of shock and disbelief rippled through the audience. Murmurs of confusion and fear spread like wildfire. Many could not comprehend the words they were hearing. Zaira, the beacon of peace and technological prowess, was surrendering. We have made the difficult decision to seek terms of surrender, Arion continued, his voice unwavering. We do this not out of weakness, but out of a desire to preserve the lives of our people. To continue this war would mean the complete annihilation of our civilization. We must choose survival, even if it means bowing to those who have brought this destruction upon us. Tears welled in the eyes of many Zairans as the gravity of the announcement sank in. Some clung to loved ones, while others stood in stunned silence. The sense of invincibility that had once defined their society crumbled in an instant, replaced by a profound vulnerability. Arion's voice softened as he spoke directly to the hearts of his people. I know this news is difficult to bear. I know that many of you will feel anger, despair, and betrayal. But I ask you to remember who we are. We are Zairans. We have always found strength in unity, and we will find it again. This is not the end of our story, but the beginning of a new chapter. One where we must find ways to coexist with those who were once our enemies. He paused once more, letting his words sink in. In the coming days, we will enter negotiations with the human leaders. We will seek to ensure the safety and dignity of our people. I ask for your patience and your trust as we navigate this uncertain future. Together, we will endure. The broadcast ended, and the city of Eldoria fell into a heavy silence. The announcement reverberated through the hearts and minds of every citizen. For some, the weight of despair was too much to bear. Reports of suicides began to emerge, as those who could not imagine life under human rule chose to end their suffering. Others took to the streets in protest, their cries of defiance echoing through the city. Amidst the chaos, there were those who held on to a glimmer of hope, believing that even in surrender, there could be a path to a better future. Families huddled together, seeking comfort in their shared resolve to survive and rebuild. As the sun set over the towering structures of Eldoria, the reality of their new existence began to sink in. The Zairans braced themselves for the arrival of the human forces, their hearts heavy with uncertainty. They did not know what the future held, but they knew that their world had irrevocably changed. The day they bowed to earth would be remembered for generations to come, a poignant reminder of their resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. The announcement of Zaira's surrender to the humans sent shockwaves through the entire planet. In the hours and days that followed, the city of Eldoria, along with other major settlements, became a cauldron of mixed emotions. The initial shock gave way to a complex tapestry of reactions that span the spectrum of human experience, from profound despair to fierce defiance, from numbing disbelief to tentative hope. As dusk settled on the day of the announcement, Eldoria's streets were unusually quiet. People gathered in small groups, whispering, their faces etched with worry. Families huddled together, trying to make sense of the unimaginable news. Some wept openly, the weight of grief and fear too heavy to contain. In the heart of Eldoria, a different scene was unfolding. The central square, usually a place of commerce and social gatherings, had become a rallying point for those unwilling to accept the government's decision. Anger simmered beneath the surface, and it wasn't long before it boiled over. Thousands of Zairans took to the streets, their voices raised in protest. They marched with signs and banners, their messages of defiance clear: no surrender, fight on, Zaira forever. The protests grew in intensity as night fell. Fires were lit, and the sound of chanting filled the air. The anger of the crowd was palpable, directed not only at the human invaders, but also at their own leaders, whom they now saw as traitors. Clashes with security forces erupted sporadically, adding to the chaos. The once peaceful city was now a battleground of emotions, the unity that had defined Zairan society fracturing under the strain. Amid the turmoil, stories of individual tragedies began to emerge. News of suicide spread, casting a dark shadow over the already somber atmosphere. Those who could not bear the thought of living under human rule chose to end their lives, their despair too profound to overcome. Families mourned their losses in private, the sorrow of their loved ones' choices deepening their own anguish. Yet, even in this dark hour, there were glimmers of resilience and solidarity. In neighborhoods across Eldoria, community leaders and elders gathered their people, urging them to stay calm and united. They spoke of the need to protect their families, to find strength in each other, and to prepare for the uncertain times ahead. These gatherings provided a semblance of stability, a reminder that despite the chaos, they were still a community, still Zairans. In quieter moments, some found solace in reflection and prayer. Temples and shrines saw an influx of visitors, seeking guidance and comfort from the spiritual leaders. The High Priestess of Eldoria, a revered figure in Zairan society, delivered messages of hope and resilience. "We are a strong and noble people," she reminded them. "Our spirit cannot be broken by external forces. Let us find strength within and face the future with courage." As days turned into weeks, the reality of their situation began to set in more deeply. The human occupation was imminent, and preparations for their arrival were underway. The Council of Elders worked tirelessly to negotiate terms that would ensure the safety and dignity of their people. These negotiations were fraught with tension, but the elders remained steadfast in their commitment to securing the best possible outcome for Zaira. Life in Eldoria and beyond gradually resumed its rhythms, albeit under a heavy cloud of uncertainty. Schools reopened, though the lessons were often interrupted by the sound of distant explosions or the rumble of passing human ships. Markets began to operate again, though goods were scarce and prices soared. The once bustling trade networks that had sustained Zaira's economy were now crippled, and the effects were felt acutely by all. In the midst of this strained normalcy, the Zairans began to adapt. Acts of kindness and mutual support became more frequent as people recognized the need to stand together. Neighbors shared what little they had, and community centers organized efforts to distribute food and resources. These small gestures of solidarity provided a lifeline, a reminder that even in the darkest times, the bonds of their society remained strong. As the day of the human arrival approached, the atmosphere in Zaira grew tense once more. The fear of the unknown loomed large, and questions about what the future would hold were on everyone's lips. How would the humans treat them? What changes would they impose? Could there ever be a chance for peace and coexistence? In these final days before the occupation, the Zairans braced themselves for what was to come. Their hearts were heavy with a mix of dread and determination. They knew that their world was about to change irrevocably, but they also knew that they had faced adversity before and survived. This time, they would do so again, drawing on their resilience and their unwavering spirit to navigate the uncertain path ahead. The day the human forces arrived on Zyara will be forever etched in the memory of its inhabitants. It began with the ominous sight of the human fleet descending through the atmosphere, their massive ships casting long shadows over the cities below. The once blue skies of Zyara turned gray with the thrumming presence of these alien invaders, their advanced technology a stark contrast to the planet's serene beauty. In Eldoria, the arrival was met with a mix of dread and morbid curiosity. The streets were eerily quiet as Zyrans watched the human ships land with military precision. The plaza that had been the epicenter of protests now stood empty, a stage set for the arrival of the conquerors. Security forces, both Zyran and human, were stationed strategically, ensuring that the transition proceeded without incident. The first human soldiers to disembark were clad in imposing armor, their faces obscured by high-tech visors. They moved with an air of efficiency and control, their every step measured and purposeful. The Zyrans, watching from the safety of their homes or the edges of the plaza, felt a shiver of fear and awe. These were the beings who had brought their civilization to its knees. High Elder Arion stood at the forefront of the Zyran delegation, flanked by members of the Council of Elders. Their expressions were somber but resolute. They had spent countless hours negotiating the terms of surrender, and now they were here to ensure that these terms were upheld. The leader of the human forces, General Marcus Lang, approached with a contingent of officers. He was a tall, imposing figure, his presence exuding authority and a stern determination. High Elder Arion, General Lang said, his voice amplified by his helmet speakers. On behalf of the United Earth Coalition, I accept your surrender. Arion nodded, his face a mask of controlled emotion. We surrender in the hope of preserving our people and our culture. We trust that you will honor the terms we have agreed upon. General Lang removed his helmet, revealing a surprisingly human face, one that was neither cruel nor harsh, but rather marked by the lines of experience and command. We will honor our agreements, High Elder. Our goal is not to destroy, but to coexist. Your people will be treated with respect, provided they comply with our directives. With those words, the formalities were concluded, and the occupation of Zyara officially began. Human soldiers fanned out across Eldoria, establishing control points and securing key locations. The Zyrans watched with a mixture of fear and fascination, their eyes following the movements of the soldiers who now patrolled their streets. Despite the initial anxiety, the human occupation was less brutal than many had feared. The soldiers were disciplined and professional, maintaining order without unnecessary violence. Curfews were imposed, and certain areas were restricted, but life continued with a surprising degree of normalcy. Schools remained open, businesses resumed their operations, and the essential services were kept running efficiently. In the weeks that followed, the Zyrans began to adapt to their new reality. Human and Zyran officials worked together to implement the new governance structures. The presence of human soldiers became a familiar sight, and while mistrust lingered, open hostilities were rare. Many Zyrans found themselves cautiously optimistic, seeing glimpses of potential cooperation. Stories of individual human soldiers exhibiting kindness and empathy began to circulate. A soldier helping a Zyran elder cross a busy street, another sharing rations with hungry children, and medical personnel treating the sick and injured without prejudice. These acts of humanity slowly began to chip away at the fear and resentment. In one notable instance, a Zyran family found themselves facing eviction due to the war's economic toll. A human officer, Captain Elena Rodriguez, intervened, ensuring they could stay in their home and providing assistance to help them rebuild. Her actions became a symbol of the unexpected decency that could be found among their conquerors. These small but significant acts gradually shifted the perspective of many Zyrans. The initial image of the humans as merciless invaders began to evolve into a more nuanced understanding. While the pain of loss and defeat was still fresh, the seeds of a potential coexistence were being sown. However, not all Zyrans were willing to accept this new order so easily. Pockets of resistance remained, and underground movements began to form, committed to reclaiming their independence. These groups viewed any cooperation with the humans as a betrayal, and they vowed to continue the struggle, no matter the cost. In this tense environment, the future of Zyara hung in the balance. The path to peace and cooperation was fraught with challenges, but so too was the path of continued resistance. The Zyarans were at a crossroads, their next steps crucial in determining the fate of their civilization. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, the human occupation became a part of daily life on Zyara. The initial fear and hostility began to give way to a complex coexistence, marked by both cooperation and tension. The Zyarans and the humans stood on the brink of a new chapter in their shared history, one that would require courage, empathy, and a willingness to bridge the vast divides that had once separated them. In the heart of Eldoria, High Elder Arion and General Lang continued their delicate dance of diplomacy and governance, both leaders acutely aware that the choices they made would shape the future of both their peoples. It was a time of uncertainty, but also a time of possibility, a chance to forge a new path forward, if only they could find the strength to seize it. As the human occupation settled into a routine, an unexpected reality began to unfold across Zyara. The fearsome image of the human conquerors gradually softened, revealing a more complex and surprisingly humane side to the invaders. Acts of kindness and empathy, initially perceived as isolated incidents, became more frequent and visible, challenging the Zyarans' perception of their new rulers. In Eldoria, Captain Elena Rodriguez continued to stand out as a beacon of this unexpected humanity. Her efforts to aid struggling Zyran families had not gone unnoticed. One particularly harsh winter, she organized a relief effort to distribute food and supplies to the poorest districts of the city. Her genuine concern for the well-being of the Zyarans earned her the respect and gratitude of many who had once viewed her with suspicion. In another part of the city, Lieutenant David Nguyen led a team of engineers to help repair critical infrastructure damaged during the war. Bridges, power grids, and water purification systems were restored, ensuring that the city's basic needs were met. His expertise and dedication were instrumental in preventing further suffering and chaos. The Zyarans working alongside him were often surprised by his willingness to listen and collaborate, fostering a sense of camaraderie that had seemed impossible just weeks earlier. These stories were not confined to Eldoria. Across Zyara, similar narratives emerged. Human medics set up clinics in remote areas, providing much-needed healthcare to Zyarans who had been cut off from medical services due to the conflict. In schools, human teachers volunteered to assist in educating Zyran children, bridging the gap created by the war and ensuring that the next generation would be equipped to face the future. One of the most profound transformations took place in the small town of Verith, far from the bustling capital. There, Sergeant Mark Thompson was stationed with his unit. Initially seen as a harsh enforcer of the occupation, Thompson's demeanor changed when he witnessed the dire conditions of the local orphanage. The building was in disrepair, and the children, many of whom had lost their parents in the war, were suffering. Moved by their plight, Thompson spearheaded a project to rebuild the orphanage. He enlisted the help of his fellow soldiers and local Zyarans, forming an unlikely partnership. The work was hard, but as the walls were repaired and new facilities added, a sense of hope began to bloom in Verith. The children, once fearful of the human soldiers, now played and laughed with them, breaking down barriers that had seemed insurmountable. Back in Eldoria, High Elder Arion observed these changes with cautious optimism. The reports of human kindness reached him regularly, and he saw the potential for a new, more harmonious chapter in Zyran history. He began to meet more frequently with General Lang, discussing ways to build on these positive developments and foster greater cooperation between their peoples. General Lang, for his part, was equally invested in this vision. He had always believed that the true strength of the United Earth Coalition lay not in its military might, but in its capacity for understanding and collaboration. He encouraged his officers to continue their outreach efforts, knowing that genuine peace could only be achieved through mutual respect and trust. Despite these promising signs, not everyone was willing to embrace this new reality. Resistance groups, fueled by anger and grief, continued to operate in the shadows. They viewed the acts of kindness from the human soldiers as mere propaganda, designed to pacify the Zyran populace and solidify the occupation. Their commitment to liberation remained unshaken, and they were determined to fight on. In the quiet hours of the night, these resistance fighters planned their next moves, setting their sights on disrupting the fragile peace that was beginning to take hold. They saw themselves as the true defenders of Zyran honor and were prepared to pay any price to reclaim their independence. As the delicate dance between cooperation and resistance played out, the Zyrans found themselves at a crossroads. The seeds of unity and understanding had been planted, but the soil was still rocky and uncertain. The future depended on the choices of individuals, both human and Zyran, and their willingness to look beyond past grievances and work towards a shared vision of peace. In the heart of Eldoria, a new monument was unveiled, symbolizing this fragile hope. It depicted a human soldier and a Zyran citizen standing together, their hands clasped in a gesture of solidarity. The inscription read, "Together, we forge a new dawn." It was a reminder that, despite the darkness of the past, there was always a possibility for a brighter future. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, the people of Zyara continued to navigate this complex landscape. They knew that the path to true reconciliation would be long and fraught with challenges, but they also knew that it was a path worth walking. The unexpected humanity shown by the human soldiers had opened a door, and now it was up to the Zyrans to decide whether to step through it and embrace the potential for a new beginning. As the months passed, the initial shock of human occupation gave way to a more stable and structured existence on Zyara. The implementation of new governance under the watchful eyes of the United Earth Coalition began in earnest, transforming the societal landscape in ways both subtle and profound. The Zyran government, now a blend of human and Zyran officials, worked diligently to create a framework that would ensure order and cooperation. This hybrid council, co-chaired by High Elder Arion and General Marcus Lang, became the central hub of decision-making and conflict resolution. They met regularly in the Eldoria Citadel, their discussions focused on rebuilding and integrating the two societies. One of the first significant changes was the restructuring of the economy. Trade, which had ground to a halt during the war, slowly resumed under the new regime. Human and Zyran engineers collaborated to repair and enhance the orbital docks, ensuring that goods could flow freely once more. This revitalization of commerce brought much-needed relief to many citizens who had struggled with shortages and inflation. In the educational sector, the integration process was equally transformative. Zyran schools began to adopt some human educational practices, emphasizing critical thinking and technological innovation. Human teachers introduced new curricula that included a broader understanding of the universe and the interconnectedness of different civilizations. This exchange of knowledge fostered a sense of curiosity and hope among Zyran youth, who now saw a future filled with new possibilities. Healthcare was another area where human influence brought significant improvements. Advanced medical technologies and practices were shared with Zyran doctors, leading to better treatment outcomes and the eradication of several diseases that had plagued the planet. Clinics and hospitals, once overwhelmed by the war's casualties, became centers of healing and recovery, staffed by both human and Zyran medical professionals. Despite these positive developments, the transition was not without its challenges. Resistance groups continued their efforts to disrupt the new order, viewing any form of cooperation with the humans as a betrayal. Acts of sabotage and guerrilla warfare kept the security forces on constant alert, creating an atmosphere of tension and mistrust. To address these issues, the Hybrid Council launched a series of initiatives aimed at promoting unity and understanding. Community outreach programs were established, encouraging dialogue between humans and Zyrans. Cultural exchange events were organized, showcasing the rich traditions and histories of both civilizations. These efforts, though met with skepticism by some, gradually began to bridge the gap between former enemies. In a symbolic move, High Elder Arion and General Lang participated in a public ceremony to plant the Tree of Unity in the central square of Eldoria. The tree, a native Zyran species known for its resilience and beauty, was chosen to represent the strength and potential of their new alliance. As the tree took root and flourished, it became a living testament to the possibility of growth and renewal in the aftermath of conflict. Amidst these changes, individual stories of reconciliation and cooperation continued to emerge. In the small town of Verith, where Sergeant Mark Thompson had led the rebuilding of the orphanage, a new community center was established. It became a hub for social activities, education, and support services, bringing together Zairans and humans in a spirit of mutual aid and friendship. The bonds formed in Verith served as a model for other communities grappling with the challenges of integration. Captain Elena Rodriguez, whose efforts in Eldoria had garnered widespread respect, was appointed as a liaison officer, tasked with facilitating communication between human and Zairan authorities. Her empathetic approach and deep understanding of both cultures made her an invaluable asset in navigating the complexities of governance. Her presence was a constant reminder that empathy and cooperation could overcome even the deepest divides. In the midst of these efforts, the Hybrid Council faced the daunting task of addressing the long-term sustainability of their new society. They initiated ambitious projects aimed at environmental restoration, leveraging human technology to repair ecosystems damaged by the war. Energy production was revamped to be more efficient and sustainable, reducing the planet's reliance on dwindling resources and mitigating the impact of past conflicts. As the new governance structure solidified, daily life on Zayara began to stabilize. Markets thrived once more, schools buzzed with eager students, and healthcare facilities operated with newfound efficiency. The streets of Eldoria, once filled with the sounds of protest and despair, now echoed with the hum of activity and progress. The palpable tension of the early days of occupation gradually gave way to a cautious optimism. Despite the progress, the memory of the war and the losses endured were never far from the minds of the Zairans. Monuments and memorials were erected to honor those who had perished, serving as solemn reminders of the past and the lessons learned. These sites became places of reflection and reconciliation, where both Zairans and humans could pay their respects and renew their commitment to a peaceful future. High Elder Arion and General Lang, now partners in governance, often reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. They knew that the path to true unity was long and fraught with challenges, but they also recognized the resilience and potential of their combined societies. Their collaboration became a symbol of what could be achieved when former enemies chose to work together towards a common goal. As the first year of human occupation drew to a close, the seeds of unity and cooperation planted in the early days began to bear fruit. The Zairans, though forever changed by the war, found new strength in their ability to adapt and rebuild. The humans, initially seen as conquerors, had become partners in this journey of recovery and renewal. The day Zaira bowed to Earth marked not just an end, but a new beginning. It was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, the power of empathy, and the possibility of forging a brighter future from the ashes of conflict. And as the tree of unity grew stronger with each passing day, so too did the hope for a lasting peace between these two once divided worlds. As the hybrid governance of Zaira and Earth moved forward, it became clear that understanding the war's profound impact required more than just anecdotal evidence. Detailed analyses and statistical insights were necessary to grasp the full scope of the conflict's consequences and to guide the rebuilding process effectively. One of the most striking revelations was the drastic economic impact of the war. Trade, once the lifeblood of Zaira's prosperity, had suffered immensely. Before the conflict, Zaira's orbital docks were bustling hubs of activity, with ships constantly arriving and departing, laden with goods from across the galaxy. However, during the war, these docks fell eerily silent. Reports indicated that 9 out of 10 berths in the orbital docks were now empty, a stark illustration of the economic devastation. The Hybrid Council prioritized reviving these trade routes. Human and Zairan economists collaborated to develop strategies for reintegrating Zaira into the galactic market. They focused on leveraging Zaira's technological prowess and unique resources to attract new trade partners. Incentives were offered to businesses willing to invest in the recovering economy, and slowly but surely, signs of revitalization began to appear. Another area of significant concern was the demographic impact of the war. Detailed census data revealed a troubling decline in the population. The war had claimed countless lives, and the psychological toll had also led to a decrease in birth rates. Efforts to reverse this trend included comprehensive healthcare initiatives, mental health support, and incentives for families to rebuild and grow. Schools and community programs were bolstered to ensure that the next generation of Zairans would be well-equipped to lead their society forward. The speed of Zaira's surrender had also been a point of analysis. The war had moved with an almost unprecedented pace. From the first aggressive strikes by the humans to the official announcement of surrender, only a few months had passed. This rapid transition was a testament to the overwhelming superiority of the human forces. The human fleet had been more than double the size of Zaira's largest fleet, a numerical advantage that translated into swift and decisive victories. Military historians and strategists studied the data meticulously, seeking to understand the dynamics of the conflict and the reasons behind the swift defeat. This analysis was not just an academic exercise, but a crucial step in ensuring that Zaira could better protect itself in the future. Defensive strategies were revised, and human military advisors shared insights to help Zaira build a more resilient defense infrastructure. Beyond the immediate impacts, the data also provided insights into the long-term challenges and opportunities. Environmental assessments showed that several ecosystems had been severely damaged by the conflict. Restoration projects were launched, combining human environmental technology with Zairan ecological expertise. These efforts aimed to heal the planet and restore the balance that had been disrupted by the war. The socio-cultural impacts of the occupation were also significant. Surveys and studies indicated a gradual shift in public sentiment. While initial resistance and resentment were strong, the ongoing cooperation and acts of humanity by the human soldiers had begun to change perceptions. The data showed a growing acceptance of the new order and a cautious optimism about the future. This was particularly evident among the younger generation, who were more open to the possibilities of a shared future with the humans. The Hybrid Council used these insights to guide their policies and initiatives. Programs aimed at fostering cultural exchange and mutual understanding were expanded. Education systems were reformed to include a broader perspective, highlighting the shared history and values of both civilizations. Community projects that encouraged collaboration and unity were given priority, creating spaces where Zairans and humans could work together towards common goals. As these efforts continued, the once stark divide between the conquerors and the conquered began to blur. The numerical data, while initially daunting, painted a picture of resilience and recovery. It highlighted the challenges, but also underscored the progress that had been made. The story of Zaira's surrender and subsequent rebuilding was one of transformation, driven by a combination of human ingenuity and Zairan perseverance. In Eldoria, the Tree of Unity stood as a living testament to this transformation. Its branches reached higher each day, symbolizing the growth and renewal of a society that had faced unimaginable challenges. Beneath its shade, Zairans and humans gathered, sharing stories, ideas, and dreams of a shared future. The data had provided the insights, but it was the people who brought those numbers to life, forging a new path forward together. As the first anniversary of the human arrival approached, the Hybrid Council planned a commemorative event to reflect on the past year and to honor the progress made. High Elder Arion and General Lang would speak, acknowledging the hardships endured and the resilience shown by both their peoples. It would be a moment to celebrate the unity and cooperation that had emerged from the ashes of conflict. The insights gleaned from the data had been invaluable in guiding the recovery process, but it was the human spirit, the willingness to reach across divides and build something new, that truly defined this chapter of Zaira's history. The future, while still uncertain, held the promise of a brighter, more united world, shaped by the collective efforts of two civilizations that had once been at war. As the preparations for the anniversary event continued, there was a palpable sense of anticipation in the air. The journey was far from over, but the path ahead was illuminated by the lessons learned and the bonds formed. Zaira and Earth, once enemies, now stood together, ready to face whatever challenges the future might bring. And in the heart of Eldoria, the tree of unity continued to grow, its roots deep and its branches wide, a symbol of hope and renewal for generations to come. As the first anniversary of the human arrival on Zyara approached, a sense of anticipation and reflection permeated the air. The past year had been marked by profound changes and unexpected transformations, culminating in a complex but increasingly hopeful coexistence between the Zyarans and the humans. The commemorative event, planned meticulously by the Hybrid Council, was set to be a pivotal moment, symbolizing the resilience, unity, and shared future of the two civilizations. The central square of Eldoria, where the Tree of Unity now stood tall and proud, was adorned with banners and decorations representing both Zyara and Earth. The atmosphere was charged with a mix of solemn remembrance and cautious optimism. Citizens from all over Zyara gathered, their faces reflecting a mosaic of emotions: grief for what was lost, gratitude for what had been rebuilt, and hope for what lay ahead. High Elder Arion and General Marcus Lang, now seen as the architects of this fragile peace, stood side by side on the stage. Their partnership, once a symbol of surrender and occupation, had evolved into a beacon of cooperation and mutual respect. The crowd fell silent as Arion stepped forward, his voice amplified to reach the masses. "My fellow Zyarans and honored guests from Earth," he began, his voice resonating with emotion. "Today, we stand together to mark a year of profound change. A year ago, our world was plunged into darkness and uncertainty. The war brought unimaginable pain and loss to our people. But today, we gather not to dwell on that darkness, but to celebrate the light that has emerged from it." He paused, allowing his words to sink in. "We have faced incredible challenges, but we have also witnessed remarkable acts of courage and compassion. We have seen the strength of our people in their willingness to adapt and rebuild. And we have discovered that even among those we once called our enemies, there is humanity and a desire for peace." General Lang stepped forward, his presence commanding, but his expression warm. "As representatives of the United Earth Coalition, we came here to secure victory. But what we found was an opportunity for something far greater, a chance to build bridges, to learn from each other, and to create a future where our two civilizations can thrive together." He gestured towards the Tree of Unity. "This tree, planted as a symbol of our shared journey, has grown strong in the past year. It stands as a testament to what we can achieve when we come together. It is a symbol of hope, resilience, and the enduring spirit of both our peoples." The crowd erupted in applause, the sound echoing through the square and beyond. It was a moment of catharsis, a collective acknowledgement of the journey they had undertaken and the potential that lay ahead. As the applause subsided, a procession of children from both Zyara and Earth stepped onto the stage, each carrying a small lantern. They represented the future, the next generation that would inherit this new world. One by one, the children placed their lanterns around the base of the Tree of Unity, their faces lit by the soft glow of the lights. It was a poignant reminder of the hope and promise that the future held, a future that would be shaped by the bonds of friendship and understanding forged in the crucible of conflict. As the ceremony continued, stories of individual acts of kindness and heroism were shared, highlighting the personal journeys that had contributed to the larger narrative of reconciliation. The tale of Sergeant Mark Thompson and the orphanage in Berith was retold, along with the efforts of Captain Elena Rodriguez and her work in Eldoria. These stories, interwoven with the broader themes of unity and cooperation, painted a vivid picture of the transformative power of empathy and collaboration. In the days that followed the commemorative event, a renewed sense of purpose and determination spread across Zyara. The Hybrid Council continued to work tirelessly, guided by the insights and lessons learned over the past year. New initiatives were launched to further integrate the two societies, focusing on areas such as cultural exchange, scientific collaboration, and environmental restoration. One of the most ambitious projects was the establishment of the Zyara Earth Research Institute, dedicated to exploring the combined potential of Zyran and human technology. Scientists and researchers from both civilizations worked together, sharing knowledge and expertise to address some of the most pressing challenges facing their worlds. This collaboration not only advanced scientific understanding, but also deepened the bonds between the two peoples. In the realm of culture and the arts, joint ventures flourished. Art exhibitions, music festivals, and theatrical performances showcased the rich traditions and creative expressions of both civilizations. These events became platforms for dialogue and understanding, allowing Zairans and humans to appreciate each other's unique perspectives and shared values. As the Tree of Unity continued to grow, its branches reaching ever higher, it became a living symbol of the enduring spirit of Zaira and Earth. It stood as a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable adversity, there is always the potential for renewal and growth. The roots of the tree, deeply embedded in the soil of both worlds, symbolized the interconnectedness of their fates and the strength that came from unity. The journey of Zaira and Earth was far from over, and challenges remained. Resistance groups, though diminished, still posed a threat, and the scars of war would take time to heal. But the progress made over the past year had shown that a different future was possible, one where cooperation and mutual respect could pave the way for lasting peace. As the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon on the day following the anniversary, the people of Zaira and their human allies looked to the future with hope and determination. They had faced the darkness together and emerged stronger for it. Now, they were ready to continue their journey, hand in hand, toward a brighter and more united world. And so, the story of Zaira and Earth continued, a testament to the power of resilience, empathy, and the unyielding belief in the possibility of a better tomorrow. As the Tree of Unity stood tall in the heart of Eldoria, it bore witness to the enduring spirit of two civilizations that had chosen to forge a new path together, united in their quest for peace and prosperity. And so, as the Tree of Unity stands tall, a symbol of resilience and hope, we look forward to the future with a renewed sense of purpose. But the journey doesn't end here. To delve into more captivating tales of transformation and unyielding spirit, click on the next video from SciFi Story Vault. Discover another remarkable sci-fi story that will transport you to new worlds and adventures. Join us in exploring the unknown and be part of the next chapter. Click now and continue the adventure with SciFi Story Vault.